Listen closely. Do you hear it? That faint sound beneath the noise of the world, the ticking of an invisible clock. It's the sound of money counting down. Every empire that ever rose believed it would last forever. Every market that ever soared thought the fall was for someone else. But behind every golden age, behind every illusion of wealth, there's a secret rhythm. One that begins with confidence, swells with greed, and ends in silence. This is the secret history of economic collapse. It begins not with panic, but with promise. Picture a city bathed in light, merchants shouting, coins clinking, ships unloading their treasures. The air smells of optimism. Credit flows like wine. In that moment, nobody can imagine it ending. In ancient Mesopotamia, the world's first traders inscribed debts onto clay tablets, trusting that tomorrow would always pay for today. They had invented credit, and with it, the possibility of collapse. Because the instant you trade what you don't have for what you hope will come, the future becomes your master. Centuries later, the Roman Empire perfected this illusion. Rome's wealth was carved from conquest. Gold poured in from the provinces, funding roads, arenas, armies, and pride. But even Rome learned the cruel arithmetic of collapse. As its armies stretched thin and silver mines ran dry, emperors began to dilute the denarius. What once was solid silver became a coin of mere shine. Trust dissolved like metal in acid. Prices soared. The word inflation was not yet born, but the people felt it, in bread, in wages, in despair. The first empire to rule by money was also the first to fall because of it. The pattern would repeat, endlessly, ruthlessly. When the Spanish galleons hauled gold from the New World, Europe drowned in its own abundance. Too much money chasing too few goods, the same disease wearing a new crown. The price revolution of the 16th century destroyed old fortunes and birthed new empires. But even as wealth reshaped the map, a truth whispered through the centuries. Abundance can be more dangerous than scarcity. Because gold may glitter, but trust alone makes it shine. Then came the bankers, the quiet architects of collapse. In the shadows of Amsterdam's canals and London's alleys, they built a new kind of empire, well, not of armies, but of paper. The world's first central banks emerged to stabilize chaos, but they also learned to create it. For every coin held in vaults, they issued promises, far more than they could ever redeem. It was genius and madness. Money was no longer something you could touch. It was an idea, a belief system, and belief is fragile. In 1720, London learned that lesson the hard way. The South Sea Company promised endless profit trading with distant lands. Aristocrats, ministers, even the king himself poured their fortunes in. Paper wealth multiplied, and with it, arrogance. But when the truth surfaced, that there were no profits, no ships, no future, the dream shattered. Fortunes evaporated in a single week. Men of power hanged themselves in their mansions. Parliament burned with scandal. The world discovered the madness of crowds and the anatomy of a bubble. Yet the world forgot. It always does.
Fast forward a century. Steam fills the air. Factories roar, and the modern economy is born. With every innovation, the railroad, the telegraph, the stock exchange, came new faith that humanity had mastered risk itself. In 1873, the first truly global panic swept across continents. Stock markets froze, banks fell like dominoes, and nations discovered how deeply intertwined they'd become. The long depression dragged on for decades. Millions lost jobs, homes, hope, and yet, from the ruins rose new giants. Steel, oil, finance, because collapse, though cruel, is also creation's twin. Still, no collapse compares to the one that reshaped the 20th century. In the 1920s, the world danced on a wire. Jazz played, champagne poured, and markets soared. Credit was easy, optimism infinite. Factories doubled output, and consumers doubled their debt. The illusion was perfect, until one October morning in 1929, when the music stopped. The Great Depression wasn't just a market crash. It was a collapse of faith in banks, in leaders, in the very idea of progress. Millions lost everything. Farmers burned crops they couldn't sell. Families lined up for bread with pockets full of worthless cash. The old economy, built on leverage and illusion, crumbled into dust. Governments intervened, printing money, rewriting rules, and building safety nets. But behind every reform was fear. Fear that it could all happen again. Because deep down, humanity had learned something terrifying. The system itself is fragile, and it depends on belief more than gold. After the war, the world tried again. The victors built a new order. One currency to rule them all. One promise to stabilize trade. The dollar became the sun around which all others revolved. But like every empire before it, this too carried seeds of collapse. When paper money replaced gold entirely, the final tether to reality was cut. Debt became infinite, and with it, the illusion of prosperity. By the 1970s, oil shocks shattered that illusion. Prices soared, unemployment climbed, and inflation returned like a ghost from Rome's past. Economists gave it new names, but it was the same old story. Too much promise, too little trust. The cycle was alive again. Then came the digital age, a revolution of screens and speed. Information moved faster than thought, and speculation became a global sport. In 1987, computers triggered a crash so sudden that traders stood frozen, watching billions vanish in minutes. In the 1990s, the dot-com bubble convinced the world that profit no longer needed reality, only clicks and dreams. And when that dream burst, another took its place, the dream of housing. Homes became assets, debt became money, and the world once again believed that risk was conquered. 2008 proved otherwise. The global financial crisis was not just a collapse of markets, it was the exposure of a secret centuries in the making. Derivatives, subprime loans, credit swaps, all modern echoes of old delusions. The same greed, the same faith in endless growth. When the system cracked, governments rushed to print, to bail out, to rescue. But something fundamental had changed. This time, collapse did not end the game. It rewrote it. The cost of survival was debt beyond comprehension. The cure became the next disease. And as nations printed trillions, as interest vanished and inequality soared, a new era began, one where collapse no longer destroys, but quietly transfers power, from the many to the few. Look around. The markets rise again, as they always do. Screens glow, indexes climb, confidence returns. But beneath it all, the same pulse beats, the same debt grows, the same belief sustains the illusion. Economic collapse is not a single event. It is a recurring dream humanity refuses to wake from. Because collapse is not caused by greed alone. It's born from hope. Hope that tomorrow will be better, that paper will hold value, that growth will never end. Hope is beautiful, but it is also dangerous. If you trace every collapse, you'll find the same pattern: innovation, expansion, euphoria, leverage, panic, and ruin. The same story told in different tongues: tulips, stocks, gold, tech, real estate, crypto. Each time the details change, but the structure remains. It's not an economic law, it's a human one. And maybe that's the true secret. Collapse is not failure, it's revelation. It exposes the truth that money was never real, only the trust behind it. That civilizations rise not because they print more, but because they believe more. And when that belief fades, even the mightiest empire turns to dust. The merchants of Babylon,
The emperors of Rome, the kings of Spain, the bankers of London, the brokers of New York, all danced to the same tune. Each believed they were smarter than history. Each thought they could borrow tomorrow. Each learned that time collects its debts, with interest. Yet humanity endures. After every crash, after every ruin, we rebuild. Maybe because collapse is not the end, it's the price of progress. The world you live in today was built on the ashes of yesterday's failure. Every skyscraper stands on buried bubbles. Every innovation is financed by forgotten debts. It's not a flaw, it's the rhythm of civilization. So what does the next collapse look like? Perhaps it's already begun. Not in the markets, but in trust. When people stop believing that money has meaning, that institutions are just, that effort leads to reward, that's when the system cracks. And when it does, it won't be sudden, it will be silent. The lights will still shine, the numbers will still climb, but underneath, faith will rot. Until one morning, the clock stops ticking. Then the cycle begins again. New wealth rises from the ruins. New empires claim the crown. New generations believe they've escaped history. And for a while, they will, until they don't. Because economic collapse is not a curse, it's a mirror. It shows us who we are when the numbers fade and the masks fall. It reveals that power without purpose is hollow, and wealth without wisdom is a weapon. Every collapse whispers the same truth. Money is man's greatest invention and his most dangerous illusion. And when the dust settles, when the ledgers close, and the last note of speculation fades into silence, one truth remains: that no empire of paper, no kingdom of credit, no digital fortress of code can outlast the heartbeat of belief.
History doesn't repeat itself by accident. It repeats because we do. We forget. We rebuild the same illusions in new languages, under new systems, wearing new suits. We think this time is different, but it never is. The secret history of economic collapse is the secret history of us. Our dreams, our greed, our faith, our fall, written in ledgers, measured in losses, remembered only when it's too late. The pattern is ancient, the names are new, but the truth endures. Every rise carries the seed of its own destruction, and every collapse the seed of rebirth. So listen again to that sound, the faint ticking beneath the noise. That is not just the clock of markets or the rhythm of trade. It is the pulse of civilization itself, steady, fragile, eternal. The heartbeat of wealth and power, and one day it will stop again.